Looks like we are rolling. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you happen to be in whatever time zone you are in right now. Welcome to Sip and Talk.
Oh, yeah. It is a great day to be here. We are coming in with some seriously high energy today.
Absolutely. So grab your coffee or, pour that glass of wine. Welcome, Sip and Talkers. Today we are taking you on a pretty wild global tour.
Seriously, we are covering everything from some massive tech courtroom showdowns, the White House dropping economic hammers, all the way to why your dog might actually be taking anti-aging pills before you do.
Which is just hilarious. But yeah, as President Trump continues his term, we are seeing some really high-stakes political and economic games playing out around the world. And let's be real, our goal here at Sip and Talk is never to take partisan sides or, point fingers. We just want to objectively break down the facts and help everyone practice some independent thinking.
Exactly. Just giving you the tools to look at the board and see the chess pieces moving.
Right. So let's jump straight into this exploration, starting with how we are exercising control on the global stage. Because our situation with Iran is it's definitely heating up. Or maybe freezing over is a better way to say it.
Yeah, freezing over is accurate. We are currently locked in a very serious stalemate with Tehran right now. That previous ceasefire framework we had has officially expired.
And the tension is just palpable. But what is interesting is that instead of sending in troops or, starting a shooting war, our strategy is completely shifting.
Right. We are moving away from traditional military strikes. Instead, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent is preparing this unprecedented economic pressure campaign.
Which they are calling economic fury, right? Like pure financial strangulation.
That is the exact term, economic fury. I mean, we already have a naval blockade in place, and obviously we have had thousands of sanctions building up since like 1979. But this new wave is a completely different animal.
Because we are targeting their shadow partners now.
Exactly. Our strategy now is to systematically isolate Tehran by going after their trading partners. Specifically, we are hunting down the exchange houses in the UAE and targeting their ghost fleets.
Okay, wait, let's pause there for a second. Because those sound like terms straight out of a James Bond movie. What mechanically is a ghost fleet? And how are these exchange houses in the UAE bypassing our sanctions in the first place? I mean, if we know they're moving the money, why can't we just freeze their bank accounts?
Well, that is the tricky part because the money isn't actually moving through traditional banks.
Oh, really?
Yeah. These exchange houses in the UAE often use what are called informal value transfer systems. Historically, you'd call it hawala. Mechanically, there is no physical money crossing any borders.
So how does the cash get there?
A broker in Dubai receives the funds, and then a totally separate broker over in Tehran pays out the equivalent amount to the recipient there. And then later on, those brokers settle their own debts with each other through, trade or commodities.
Wow. So it is completely off the standard global banking grid.
Precisely. Which makes it incredibly hard for our Treasury Department to actually track or freeze.
That is wild. Okay, and what about the ghost fleets?
So the ghost fleets are how they physically move the oil to fund those shadow transactions.
Yeah.
We are talking about these aging, totally unregulated oil tankers that spoof their GPS trackers.
Wait, spoof them how? Like they fake their location?
Exactly. Every commercial ship is legally required to use an automatic identification system, but these ghost ships will digitally broadcast that they are sitting somewhere near Japan, while physically they are parked right in the Persian Gulf.
That is insane.
Yeah, and they paint over the ship names, they shut off their radios, and they do these massive ship-to-ship oil transfers in the middle of the ocean in the pitch black.
Wow. So trying to stop this isn't even a blockade anymore. It is like having a neighbor who plays their music way too loud, and instead of going over there and starting a fist fight, you just, quietly cut off their Wi-Fi and cancel their food deliveries to see how long they can last.
That is a great analogy, just slowly turning the screws.
But I have to push back a little here. Does this actually work? I mean, massive pressure or not, if we just squeeze their shadow economy, won't the regime just adapt? History kind of shows they don't usually just fold and apologize when you cut off the cash.
And you are hitting on the fundamental flaw of relying completely on economic fury. I mean, it cripples a country's raw power, absolutely. But history dictates that it rarely works as a standalone strategy. You really need a diplomatic off-ramp.
Right. Why do we need an off-ramp if the whole point is to punish them?
Because if you back a regime into a corner using pure financial strangulation, and you offer them absolutely no way to save face or negotiate a way out, they just dig their heels in. And that is especially true against a regime that views our actions as an existential crisis.
They feel like their back is against the wall.
Exactly. The leadership in Tehran is entirely willing to let their own citizens endure crushing economic pain, food shortages, hyperinflation, as long as the regime itself survives. So we can apply all the economic pressure we want, but without a clear diplomatic path forward, it just turns into this forever standoff.
Where the everyday citizens are the ones who suffer the most.
Spot on.
Man, that is heavy.
Yeah.
So we are seeing how economic architecture is basically weaponized to manipulate behavior on a global scale. But let's bring it back home for a minute, because there is a very different kind of architecture being weaponized right here to manipulate our daily habits. Let's pivot over to Silicon Valley.
Oh, this is a huge one. The legal community is actively calling this Meta's big tobacco moment.
Which is a massive claim. So here's the situation for everyone listening. We have this massive bipartisan coalition of 29 states, and they're being led by California Attorney General Rob Bonta, and they are taking Meta to court in California. The states are officially accusing Meta of deliberately designing Facebook and Instagram to intentionally hook young users. Like they are pointing to the architecture of the apps as literal digital nicotine.
And the specific focus of this lawsuit is what makes it so groundbreaking. Because, for years, the debate was always about content moderation, like what are people allowed to post?
Right, the censorship arguments.
Exactly. But this lawsuit completely ignores that and targets the fundamental engineering of the platforms. The states are arguing that things like infinite scroll, the autoplay features, and just the relentless barrage of push notifications, all of that constitutes predatory design.
Let's actually break down that engineering, because infinite scroll isn't just a convenience feature. It fundamentally removes the brain's natural stopping cues.
Yes, exactly.
Think about reading a physical book. You reach the bottom of the page, and your brain registers this little completion metric. You have to actively decide to turn the page. But infinite scroll eliminates that friction entirely.
Right, there is no stopping point.
It's insane. I mean, I will open an app just to check a quick barbecue recipe, and then 2 hours later, I am deeply invested in a tutorial on how to trim a guinea pig's nails. And I do not even own a guinea pig.
We have all been there. And that pairs perfectly with what they call intermittent variable rewards. It is the exact same psychological mechanism that casinos use in slot machines.
The pull to refresh.
Exactly. You pull down to refresh your feed, and you have no idea if you are going to get something totally boring or this highly stimulating hit of dopamine. That unpredictability is what cements the compulsion.
Okay, I get the slot machine analogy, and it is definitely annoying.
Uh-huh.
But I am going to challenge the big tobacco or Purdue pharma comparisons here. I mean, the opioid crisis literally killed people. Smoking physically blackens your lungs. Is it really fair to equate an app that wastes your time with products that cause terminal illness?
Well, the states are arguing that the psychological poisoning is the equivalent here, especially regarding developmental harm in teenagers. But honestly, the comparison isn't just about the physical damage. It is really about corporate liability and intent.
Okay, explain that.
So the internal documents brought forward in the latest reporting show that leadership allegedly knew the product was causing tangible harm, but they prioritized profit and engagement metrics anyway.
Oh, you were talking about the plastic surgery filter incident.
Yes, this is a crucial piece of evidence. The internal documents detail this specific filter that essentially showed young users what they would look like if they drastically altered their faces. Higher cheekbones, thinner noses, that sort of thing.
Right.
And Meta's own internal safety team raised severe red flags about it. They explicitly warned that this filter was directly causing body dysmorphia and depression among young girls.
But Mark Zuckerberg allegedly overruled his own safety team's warnings and pushed it through anyway, just because it drove user engagement. I mean, that is a devastating allegation.
It really is. And if the court sides with the states, the financial penalties being discussed could reach nearly $200 billion.
That is billion with a B.
But here's the thing. The money isn't even the real threat to Meta. The states are actually seeking injunctive relief.
Meaning, the court wouldn't just hand down a fine. They would legally force Meta to fundamentally alter the DNA of how its apps operate.
Exactly. It would essentially dismantle the very algorithms that make the company profitable in the first place.
Which would set a precedent that rips through every single tech company operating today. You just wouldn't be able to rely on behavioral hijacking as a business model anymore.
It would be a total game changer for Silicon Valley.
Speaking of chaos, let's move from algorithmic chaos on our phones to the chaos in our domestic politics and our wallets. Because the political circus right now in Washington is definitely not helping our grocery bills.
Oh, not at all. The intersection of Washington politics and the everyday cost of living is causing some severe anxiety for the average consumer right now.
Let's start with the politics side of it. Down in Florida's 19th congressional district, the Republican primary to replace Byron Donalds, who's obviously vacating the seat to run for governor, is drawing national attention. And political analysts are literally characterizing this race as an absolute clown car.
A clown car is putting it mildly.
Right. We have 10 candidates fighting for this one seat. And the reports point out the field is just packed with out-of-state carpetbaggers and even a couple of ex-convicts who received pardons.
It is fiercely contested, and the dynamics shifted significantly when Trump officially endorsed Catalina Lauf, who previously served in the Commerce Department.
Yeah, in a crowded race with no clear frontrunner, that endorsement carries a ton of weight.
It does. But what is truly concerning here is the massive disconnect between these highly sensationalized, chaotic political primaries and what voters are actually terrified about right now.
Which is affordability. I mean, the price of groceries is just out of control, specifically beef. Tyson Foods, which is America's largest meat packer, is currently shutting down beef processing plants in Illinois and Washington state. Ground beef prices are up 25%, and overall beef prices are up 12%. I was at the store the other day, and at these prices, I can only assume these cows are being fed a strict diet of gold leaf and truffles.
I mean, it certainly feels that way at the checkout line.
Right. But why are plants closing when the prices are so incredibly high? That doesn't make sense.
Because the cattle supply in our country has actually hit a 5-decade low.
Wait, really? A 50-year low?
Yeah. And to understand why, you have to look at the actual life cycle of the agricultural economy. Over the last few years, severe droughts wiped out vast stretches of grazing pastures, and at the exact same time, the cost of commercial feed just skyrocketed.
So the ranchers couldn't afford to feed their own animals.
Exactly. They were forced into early culling. They had to liquidate their herds just to survive financially.
Oh, I see. So we had a temporary glut of meat a few years ago because everyone was selling off their cows, but now the bill is finally coming due.
Precisely. And you can't just flip a switch to print more cows. The biological cattle cycle takes years to rebuild. I mean, a cow's gestation period is 9 months, and then it takes another 18 to 22 months for that calf to reach market weight.
Wow, so we are stuck in this for a while.
We are. The meat packers are currently paying premium prices for a drastically shrinking supply of cattle, and they are passing those costs directly to you at the grocery store.
Okay, so help me connect the dots here.
Yeah.
We have Washington politicians fighting in these chaotic primary elections. We have a multi-year biological supply chain crisis inflating our grocery bills. And meanwhile, our Federal Reserve is having its own internal meltdown over how to fix it all.
Yes, you are referring to the fractured leadership under Fed Chair Kevin Warsh.
Right. We have this literal family fight playing out publicly where 3 regional bank presidents recently dissented on the interest rate decision. How does that internal boardroom squabbling actually impact a citizen who is just trying to afford a summer barbecue?
Well, the Fed's primary tool to fight inflation is manipulating interest rates, right? So when the Fed's leadership is visibly fractured, with regional presidents dissenting and openly arguing over the path forward, it creates deep uncertainty. And if there is one thing the markets absolutely despise, it is uncertainty.
Because nobody knows what the cost of capital will be next month.
Exactly. Businesses don't know whether to hire or expand. Banks don't know how to price mortgages or auto loans. Consumer credit card rates become super volatile.
So you are paying 25% more for ground beef. Your credit card interest might spike if you have to float that grocery bill. And the politicians who are supposed to be fixing the supply chain issues are entirely focused on fighting each other in clown car primaries.
It creates a pervasive sense of powerlessness.
It really does, which honestly perfectly sets up our next topic. Because when the human world feels incredibly expensive, politically stressful, and overly optimized by algorithms we cannot control, we start seeking comfort in some bizarre extremes. Let's talk about biohacking our pets and the perfection backlash.
The contrast between these two consumer trends is such a fascinating psychological study in how we cope with anxiety.
It is wild. So let's look at the dogs first. Pet supplement market has exploded into a $2.9 billion industry. Owners aren't just buying skooky toys and kibble anymore. They're treating their dogs like Silicon Valley tech billionaires.
It is true.
People are putting their Labradors under red light therapy lasers. They are injecting them with peptides. And going back to the hook of today's conversation, they're giving their dogs rapamycin to try and extend their lifespans.
Let's explain the mechanics of rapamycin because it is genuinely remarkable. It is an FDA-approved drug primarily used to prevent organ rejection in human transplant patients.
Right.
But scientists discovered that in small intermittent doses, it inhibits a specific protein pathway in cells called mTOR.
I have read about this. It basically tricks the body into thinking it is fasting, right?
Yes. When the mTOR pathway is inhibited, the cells stop focusing on growth and they switch into this repair and cleanup mode. It is a process called autophagy.
So it clears out the damaged cellular component.
Exactly. And in mice, it has shown significant lifespan extension. So now owners are taking a leap of faith, hoping it acts as a fountain of youth for their dogs.
Look, the emotional logic is bulletproof. We all want our dogs to live forever. But the lengths to which people are going really highlight this deep desire for control. Like, we can't control the Federal Reserve, we can't control geopolitical stalemates, but maybe, just maybe, we can scientifically manage our golden retriever's cellular aging process.
It is a way to grasp at certainty. But the irony is how we are treating ourselves in contrast.
Oh, it is hilarious. While we are trying to turn our dogs into these biohacked, immoral super beings, human beings are currently experiencing a massive optimization backlash. We're just utterly exhausted with the digital age.
We really are. The death of the highly curated Instagram aesthetic is becoming very visible in consumer spending.
We are sick of AI-generated flawless images. We are tired of the immovable frozen Botox faces and the hyper-optimized morning routines. Gen Z is actively leading a rebellion against perfection.
And they're spending real money to do it.
Yeah, they're buying vintage digital cameras from the early 2000s. They specifically want those old CCD sensors that render skin poorly and make the lighting look super harsh, just to get that grainy, authentic look.
They are buying physical vinyl records, which objectively have way more audio imperfections than a lossless digital stream. They are embracing messy, lived-in kitchens online. Cluttered counters, mismatched plates, instead of those sterile white marble countertops that look like operating rooms.
It makes perfect sense, though. For a decade, we have been sold the idea that technology could optimize every single facet of our existence. But perfection is sterile. It lacks humanity. The push toward physical media, unedited photos, and visible flaws is just this desperate grasp to prove that real, messy human beings actually exist behind the screens.
So we want our dogs to be cutting-edge biotech marvels, but we just want to look like a slightly blurry, unedited photograph taken at a basement party in 1998.
Exactly. It highlights how exhausting it is to constantly perform perfection, which actually brings us to an incredible insight regarding how we actually do change ourselves, not through digital filters, but through mechanical effort. Let's wrap up today with this final thought on the faking it transformation model.
This is such a cool concept.
It really is. It comes from a TEDx talk by Kevin Quantum, who is this scientist turned magician. And he argues that completely reinventing yourself, whether you want to become a better public speaker, an athlete, or totally change careers, isn't about finding some magical inner motivation. It is a highly mechanical system based on the premise of an old British reality show called Faking It.
He essentially strips away all the mystical self-help jargon and breaks personal transformation down into 3 very actionable structural steps.
Right. So step 1, change your social environment. If you want to transform, you have to literally go hang out with the people you want to become. Proximity is powerful.
Because your environment dictates your baseline norms. If you surround yourself with high achievers or marathon runners or whatever group you are targeting, their baseline habits literally force you to adapt. It is a survival mechanism.
Then step 2, initiate an identity shift. You have to throw yourself into uncomfortable challenges. You actively say yes to the things that terrify you. You can't just read a book about public speaking. You have to actually step onto the stage and endure the panic.
And that panic is the catalyst. You force your brain to experience the new reality, which leads directly to the most critical component. Step 3, high-frequency repetition.
The reps. He says your rate of transformation is directly tied to the sheer volume of reps you put in over a very short amount of time.
It is neuroplasticity in action.
Like going to the gym. If you lift weights once a month, nothing happens. But if you put in enough reps day after day, you forge entirely new neural pathways through volume and intensity. You basically trick your own brain into believing you are always this new, upgraded version of yourself.
You don't have to internally feel like the new person at first. You just have to mechanically execute the actions of that person until the feeling naturally catches up with the behavior.
Fake it till you make it, but with a scientific blueprint.
Yeah.
I love it. All right, before we let you go, we want to remind you that sharing these geopolitical developments and domestic observations is not about pointing fingers. Our goal at Sip and Talk is purely to provide a clear, objective perspective so you can form your own independent judgments about the world around you.
And a quick reminder that any market data, economic trends, or corporate developments discussed today are for informational purposes only and do not constitute professional investment advice.
Exactly. Now, if you enjoyed this conversation, please hit that subscribe button for the Sip and Talk podcast wherever you get your audio. And if you're looking for some visual inspiration to cleanse your palate after all this heavy news, you have to check out our old friend Mickey's YouTube channel, Mickey to Life. He just uploaded some absolutely incredible new travel vlogs. His cinematography is stunning, and Mickey always knows how to capture the best angles of the world.
His latest videos really are a breath of fresh air.
They really are. So we want to leave you with one final provocative thought to chew on this week. If personal transformation is truly just a mechanical process of high-frequency repetition of fake behaviors, at what point does the mask become the face? If you successfully fake it until you make it, is the new version of you genuinely authentic, or are we all just a collection of highly practiced artificial habits?
Wow. That is a brilliant question to sit with.
Something to think about while you're drinking your coffee tomorrow morning.
All right, everyone, remember our motto. Stay curious and keep thinking independently. See you next time.
Until next time, take care.